meetings.
Exactly.
No, we don't do that.
Thank you, my friend. Hi, you're on the air. Do you have a question for Jeff?
Yes, I do.
All right, go right ahead.
I have a question in regards to policing in this community. It seems that as of recent, especially in the last, I'd say, year, there has been, a bit of an uptick in activities in the vicinity, south on Academy over by Washington, where Franklin all meet over there. There was a shooting over this past weekend, and I sat out with my wife, and I heard gunshots. She laughed at me and called the kids as far as go, no, that was gunshots. Next morning, we hear in the news that there was a shooting. She was appalled. She was angered. She was livid. And I just happened to, notice you don't see a lot of police presence from between around 1800 to, say, 1 a.m. It's sporadic. It's very, I'll put it this way. Policing means being there. Being there means deterrence. Deterrence keeps crimes from happening.
Sure, I understand that. And the police department, or like any police department, are pulled in different directions. I know that when there are particular neighborhood problems, and I had one in my neighborhood last year, and I worked with the chief and the department on trying to get it solved and so on, and they did a good job. Sometimes those things take time. Now, as far as stopping someone from doing something crazy or stupid, you can't be everywhere at every moment in time. And if there are given neighborhoods that you don't think are getting adequate patrols, I'd be glad to bring that to the attention of the manager and to Chief Goss, and they can try to drive around there more. But that isn't necessarily going to stop someone from doing something like that. There are an increasing number, or at least anecdotally, an increasing number of small-time but still disturbing crimes, and a lot of it is it's drug related.
Oh no, and I understand that, but I guess what I'm pretty much getting at is I've spent a lot of years in law enforcement, and deterrence being there is 100% of the thing. It's not the alarm system; it's seeing the door locked. It's not the house having 16 dogs and the owner having 20 guns. It's that sign out front that happens to say some security company on it.
Right.
Be honest.
Well, that's part of it, but I think there's a variety of ways that citizens can make their homes more secure, and maybe there needs to be better jobs done of explaining that to people.
No. Basically,
he wants more cars.
And then we're going to get moving on. Thank you, Cole. But just so I can summarize what he's saying. 1800, obviously that's
600.
That's it. Okay.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock to 1 o'clock. I disagree with him, by the way. But then again, he lives in a different neighborhood than I do. He says there's not enough police protection. Now, again, getting back to the original call-up just prior to that, would that be something that you'd go up to Chief Goss and just have a one-on-one conversation and say, you know what, my constituents are saying that there's certain areas of the city that just aren't being covered, and then we had shootings.
It depends on
is that something that would happen?
Situation. If it was a relatively minor item, I might just call them and just to make them aware of it. But generally, if it's anything of any import, I would go through the manager because that's the way the system's set up.
Don't you agree that, by the way, Mr. Williams, I forget his first name, back in 1919 set up the managed system of government, which many cities, small cities especially, have adopted. I think there's an education that has to happen here because a lot of people, especially this fellow that just called in, more than likely with the military because of his terminology, probably is acclimated with the fact that there is one man on top, and that's the mayor. You are pretty much, you know the deal, but a lot of people don't know the type of government we have, and as a result of that, Jeff, people don't know what your day-to-day responsibilities are.
The system of government can work if the people involved try to make it work. And one of the things I try to do as mayor is make this system work, and it is a council-manager form of government. And that means you want to be present, and you want to have a presence known around City Hall to show you're interested. You want to stay on top of things, but you also want to respect that basic chain of command.
Right.
Because and sometimes that's very difficult, and it became very difficult, for instance, on this Parks and Rec thing, because everybody wanted to go down there and say, well, what's going on here?
Right.
But you've got to operate within the confines and know how to make that system work. And the system is that a city council needs to identify problems. In some cases, might have to, as we did, hire an auditor to identify what the problem is, and then come up with a policy and program solution and instruct the manager to move ahead on that. Mm-hmm. Because we don't hire and fire people except for the manager and the clerk. But we do provide the policy and the funding. And, we have to use those powers to everyone's advantage and then hold the manager and her department heads' feet to the fire.
Gotcha. Hi, you're on the air. Do you have a question for Jeff?
Not a question. I'm just going to support your last caller's statement there because I live right around the corner from where that recently happened. And my issue is that I have called several times to the police department to report stuff, and it takes, and granted they may be busy, it takes forever for anybody to show up, and by the time they do, whatever has happened is gone, and nobody can be found. The problem is they know they have problem neighborhoods. Those should be subject to increased presence, and I don't see that presence, yet I see the problems constantly cropping up in those areas. Mm-hmm. And trust me, I look at the whatever news junkie posts the next day for incidents.
And this is Lower Academy Street?
I'm talking Clay Street, but Clay Street, Lower Academy, it's a haven for dirtbags.
Yeah.
It's a problem, and it needs a visible patrol presence. And I'll tell you what, if I were Mary Corvo or her husband, and I called into the city, I believe that I would get more attention to my concern. There's been numbers of times where I've called and said, hey, you got these kids smoking dope here on the Academy Street playground, and there's 5-year-olds 50 feet away playing kickball, and nobody ever shows up.
Well, that's that's one of the reasons that I try to be as accessible and open as I can and appear on shows like this or give my phone number out. I'll bring that to the attention of the manager and the chief and find out, what more can be done.
Absolutely. When you know you have problem areas, an increased and visible presence is a deterrent to the activities.
Yeah, listen,
over and over.
And in this day and age, Glenn, in order to leverage what police resources you have, I think, a lot of times citizens have to keep an eye on neighbors and one another. And I mentioned the incidents we had in my neighborhood. And a lot of times, maybe you shouldn't, but I'd see somebody trying to pull in and use my parking lot so they could go across the street, and I'd run out and chase them out and so on. Sure. You got to let them know that the behavior isn't.
Well, not everyone can do that. Not everyone's mayor, or for that matter, a guy that might be more authoritative.
Some people are more vulnerable, and obviously that's what the
that's
police
why they lead it. No, I mean, getting back to the statement I made or the things we were talking about earlier, there is a lot more power on behalf of Mayor Corvo as city manager than you. Would you agree with that?
Well,
I mean, that's what people just don't understand is why I bring that up, Jeff.
I suppose it's the difference between a board of directors and a chief executive
Firing
officer.
and hiring? I mean, that's something, like you admit, you cannot do.
Sure. And there's, for instance, and we don't, the only positions the city council hires to are the city manager and the city clerk.
Right.
This year we did go through that, though, with the Donna Dutton leaving as city clerk.
Sure.
We had the opportunity to hire someone, and the council really took it seriously, and I thought the process went great. And this was an example of trying to, making a bazillion phone calls to make sure everybody's heard on it. Right. And in the end, we settled on Ann Saunders as the choice. She's doing a great job as city clerk.
Good.
And that whole process went well, and you never heard anything about it. No one got embarrassed or had their name outed or anything like that. Right. And we went from 24 applicants down to Ms. Saunders and ended up getting a very good choice out of it. So,
unlike the time when they were looking for somebody and they had like soirees up
no
there
soirees,
at the
I don't like soirees.
All right, we're running out of time here. This person's been on the phone for a while. Who's this?
Hey, it's SG.
SG.
Hey.
Hey, what other city do you have the mayor available for an hour every day on the radio to air, your complaints? It's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yeah, but you know what? Jeff doesn't talk about mayoral issues during the Highline show.
He doesn't, but if
he doesn't like to.
Don't say there's this problem or that problem. He listens and he tells you he'll check it down. So I think that's a wonderful thing.
Well,
but I haven't listened because we were at CC's. But did anybody mention the fact that if Smith wins, that his open seat is then elected by the council and not an election? And I think that's an important issue. I'll get off to my...
Thank you, my friend. That's it.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting nuances to this election because of the way things are.
Yeah.
I mean, my opponent has 2 more years left on his term. So
which was not the case for Simmons if that were to happen.
Right. If he loses, he's still on the council in January.
Right.
Now, if he wins, then his council seat's vacant. And the council that's sitting in January, those 4 members, would pick whoever it is. So the public won't get to weigh in on who that next council person is. That's important in the sense that it's 20% of the body,
right?
And one person is the balance of power on most issues. So I've said a couple of times I think people should maybe have some insight as to, what the direction would be if that scenario were to play out.
It sounds like a special election.
No.
It sounds like it would be a perfect opportunity for
Well, that's not the way the law is set up.
Huh.
So the council would fill until another election can be held for the remainder of the term, which would be November of 2012.
Gotcha.
So that person would be in for 12 months
Uh-huh.
on that appointment, and I think that's that could be a fairly contentious thing come January. But you know what? The good news is, Glenn?
Yeah.
Not going to happen.
I was going to say.
Because
little Richard Nixon came out eventually in this interview, and it just did, folks.
I'm getting great feedback from people, and I'm working hard, and I'm going to win this thing.
Gotcha. All right, let's one more call, then I got one last statement. Hi, who's this?